ahead and get started. Are other people in the right place? We don't usually have this. I'm going to open the special meeting of the Planning and Zoning. It's in regards to a PUD application that's been submitted by St. Joe Company. And I just want to review something before I turn the floor over to Port St. Joe, or I was St. Joe, I'm sorry, St. Joe. We've got a lot of people here today. We want everybody to be able to have their input. So what we're going to do is have a 3-minute timer when you speak, and we'll go through. And when you do come up, we need to get it on film, so come up at least to the table there, or maybe over to the side where the board is, and state your name and your address. You need to be a landowner or a resident of Mexico Beach. And first thing I want to do is open the meeting and ask Nick to tell us, Nick, why are we here when we just had a meeting a week ago?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman. We had a planning and zoning board meeting a week ago. At the conclusion of the hearing, after taking some input from the public, the board, I think, voted to delay its consideration.
Yes.
Normally, we would continue a hearing so that we could finish it at a later date or some other way to handle that. So with it being delayed for consideration, I'd say tonight the best thing to do is just treat this like a fresh start. If you spoke last time and you want your comments on the record, I'd suggest go ahead and speak again. For the board, the deliberations you had last time, I would kind of, again, treat it like a fresh start tonight. We have plenty of people here who'd like to be heard, and because of the way the vote was last time, it's just cleaner to treat it like a new hearing. I would.
Can you speak louder?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
At the end, when you start deliberating and you're thinking through your recommendations on the project, it is important to just, unless you're missing something very specific that you need to ask for, it's important to go ahead and form the conclusions and provide the recommendations to the council. It doesn't really work to leave the process in limbo, and again, you're an advisory board, so eventually it's going to be the city council looking at this 2 more times because they're going to do an ordinance on this project, which is a 2-reading process.
Okay.
Who are the people we're talking to here?
We're advisory board.
And you
made up
are?
of citizens. I'm Bill Driver. We lost our name tags in the flood. But we're volunteer advisory board.
Okay,
All
you're
citizens
volunteers,
of,
you're not county or nothing, okay.
all citizens of Mexico Beach.
Yeah, this
Some of
is-
us never been before, we don't know what we're looking at.
Okay.
Well, how do we all introduce ourselves?
I'm sorry?
Well, I'll go first. I'm Nick Beninati. I'm the city attorney. I usually go to all the council meetings. I come to planning and zoning meetings on occasion.
I'm City Administrator Mario Gisler.
I'm Lorene Lindsay. I'm a member of Planning and Zoning, but I'm alternate 1. I live here in Mexico Beach.
Bill Driver, live here in Mexico Beach. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Committee.
Jack Harrigan, I live at 103 20th Street, Mexico Beach.
Laura Metcalf, 86 First Street. I'm a member of Planning and Zoning.
David Masters, 110 20th Street, Mexico Beach, place 5, Planning and Zoning.
Alex Hogan, 425 7th Street, Mexico Beach.
Jim Bush, 130 Palm Street, I'm an alternate to the board.
Okay. Go ahead.
Doug Brook, Panhandle Engineering, engineer that reviewed the application for the city.
Great. Jim is asked to address.
Let them go ahead with their proposal first, because I want to be able to read this stuff before.
Okay, all right. First thing I want to start off with, there seems to be a little confusion, and I want to help clarify that. Currently, this property that we're talking about, 500+ acres, was incorporated into the city of Mexico Beach in 2006. It had a specific zoning title of tourist mixed use. That, which I'm going to read for you what can be in tourist mixed use in a minute. That initial approval about 6 or 7 months ago, the density of what was approved in '06, the council approved updating that density to what the current density of any property in Mexico Beach is with that zoning rating. So the density went up a little bit, or went up substantially, I guess, on the number of homes, but the units per acre actually went down a little bit for a PUD, if it's a PUD. So let me just read you for tourist mixed use, and I won't read the whole thing, but this is what this property is currently zoned at. In whatever happens here, they could, St. Joe property could develop the property under its current zoning situation. Principal uses are single family, multiple family, hotel, motel, neighborhood and community scale, commercial, beach clubs, public and private uses such as offices and services, religious institutions, marinas, water-related facilities, entertainment facilities. With council approval, could be condominiums, docks, piers, etc. Prohibited uses are mobile home parks, landfills, hazardous waste, pits, pastures, forestry, feedlots, junkyards, medical marijuana treatment center. So that's what it's currently zoned right now. Okay? I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to, please introduce yourself.
Yes.
Our folks at St. Joe, and give us a little overview of what they're asking for in this PUD application. A planned unit development is a PUD, if any of you are keeping score.
Thank you. And thank you all for your time tonight. My name's Bridget Precis. I'm with the St. Joe Company, and we are here with our PUD application for the 554 acres that we own in the city limits of Mexico Beach. We started this process back in November of 2018. Shortly after the hurricane hit, we initiated contact with the mayor and with the city administrator at that time about our idea. We wanted to come into the community, we wanted to help with the recovery effort. We wanted to provide housing and get housing built as quickly as possible to service the displaced residents and citizens of Mexico Beach, provide alternatives for the mom and pop type commercial operations that Mexico Beach has been known for. And all knowing that, the city was concerned about all the damage that it had sustained, but also during the reconstruction effort, potentially losing the character that it was known for and that everybody really likes about Mexico Beach. We worked on our concept plan, and we were initially focused on the north side of 98. And we came to the city council meeting in March of 2019 with an initial plan that showed a mix of commercial, garden apartments, villa townhomes, and single-family detached residential. In that council meeting, that was just an update. We wanted to share what our ideas were for our property and that plan. There was no action taken by the council at that meeting, and then later that month in March, we hosted open houses at the Gulf County Beaches Fire Station for the public to come and see our plan, see what we're proposing to do, and provide some feedback. We heard a lot of good comments from people. There was concern expressed about the boat ramp and boat ramp access. There was concern expressed about where were these people gonna go to the beach. There was concern about traffic on Highway 98 and how are we gonna accommodate that. And at that point in time, we started working, when we realized we needed to go through a PUD process for our overall plan approval, we started looking at the south side of 98 and came up with an overall development plan that we wanted to request the comprehensive plan amendment that removed the 750 unit cap and would allow us to just develop under the tourist mixed use lane use designation. So this is the current plan as it sits. Chris will go into some more detail in the particulars of it. But we are providing for a trail system to get people to the south side of 98 to the beach. We've increased parking areas on the commercial parcel me Jim Curtis today. He's with Home Corp. He's got some information specific to the apartments and lease rates and some more images about what those apartments would look like. And I'd like to give him an opportunity to introduce himself and share his information with you all.
Thank you. I'm, if you'll hand me that big board, I'll hold it up, because I think people in the back are having trouble seeing it. And if you give me that one before also, we'll get Jack to hold that one, so we can see it okay. I'm sorry it's so far away, but.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I am Jim Curtis. I'm one of the partners of Home Corp. Home Corp develops Class A multifamily product in the southeast, primarily in secondary and tertiary markets. We're not newcomers to this. The five principals got about 140 years of multifamily experience. In addition to that, in addition to development, we also manage, so we'll be here long term. We develop it, we'll be here with our partner St. Joe and manage the project.
Sir, you need to speak up.
Okay, here's a presentation regarding Home Corp. We'll pass that around. The board represent is
Can't see it.
this
You need to
picture.
put that stand over there.
Can't see this one?
There we go.
Can we put the easel back there?
There you
Down where the
go.
flag is?
Just pass it around.
I think,
Sir,
right there up front.
Can I hold it just a second? This is Pier Park in Panama City that we recently completed. And the property in Mexico Beach will be comparable to this. It'll be, we'll have metal roofs. We'll have a big community center. We'll have pools, and you'll see some of the model apartments that we have in the property. We,
I'm looking at the cost for what that is.
We envision this property being for what we like in the industry call workforce housing. Typically in our apartments, we would have teachers, first responders, and in this location, we would have enlisted people and junior officers from Kendall Air Force Base in addition to the contractors. The rents in this property would be, for a one bedroom would be $1,185, for a two bedroom $1,500, and a three bedroom $1,630.
Sir, excuse me, what would be your tallest height limit? How many floors can you build?
Three floors. And another thing, we don't do short-term rentals. We give 12 months leases. If you want a 6-month lease, you have to pay for it, because we want to have long-term residents in our property. We feel these rents are very affordable. I went on the website and looked at the Tyndall Air Force Base housing allowance, and I just pick out E5, and with dependents it's $1,794, so they can easily afford a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. We're excited about Mexico Beach. This is our kind of market, and we know there's a need here. People are driving from Tyndall Air Force Base all the way over to Pier Park to rent apartments. And we got a number of them, and we don't have any there to lease, so there's no place for these people to go.
How many units are you proposing?
216, sir.
216?
Yes, sir.
And are you allowing 216, could all the occupants own a boat?
No, sir,
There's no accountability for them having boats or anything like that?
we're not,
What's that?
we don't require or deny anybody having.
No, I'm just wondering where those additional spots would go for people who did wanna own boats, which most of them probably would with the access we have here.
I think,
Let me interject something, okay? With the rents he's talking about,
Okay.
we're talking about, for the most part, E7 and below, or O1 and O2s. They're not gonna have boats, they're not gonna be able to afford a boat, so that's not gonna be an issue.
I spent 30 years in government, they can afford boats, I've had boats, that's all.
Well, the people that I've worked with in the past at that rank wouldn't have had boats.
Well, okay,
Okay.
whatever.
The people who can afford more money are not gonna be in these apartments. Okay, then let me ask you this, what's the parking situation gonna be for the apartments? You gonna give 2 spaces per apartment or 3? What's your layout for the parking?
496, parking places.
496 parking places?
That equals out to what?
This is about 2 parking per unit, a little over 2.
Yeah, and the specifics about the design of the first phase of the apartments will come with the development order presentation for that. But we provided all of the required parking per parking generation standards with some additional as well.
okay, in the back. Name
Don
and-
Tilley, 311 Hadley Drive.
Come up here, please.
Yeah, is your development in addition to what was originally planned?
It's part of the development, the apartment part.
So what you had the meeting for in March is, this is altogether different, I understand, but they're not gonna be both done?
Within the 500 and some acres, there'll be apartments. This is the apartment developers, I understand it. So
We're
it's
here
the same
200
thing we've been talking about.
But we're talking about both sides of the road.
Apartments right now, I think, are set for the north side of the road.
Yes, right, correct.
Okay?
Yes, the water sewer infrastructure, but we know Mexico Beach already has some serious problems.
Thank you, sir.
How's that going to be handled?
Panhandle Engineering,
We took a look at the information as far as the.
speak up as loud as you can, because that thing in the back just.
Okay, we've reviewed the capacities that are projected for the entire development, the full build-out of the PUD, and measured that against the existing infrastructure. And while we understand there are some improvements that are ongoing, there will also be improvements associated with the developments within the PUD, and there is and will be adequate capacity.
My understanding is the water sewer is all headed to Tenville anyway, correct?
Correct.
And they have the capacity to handle this all additional.
Yes.
I don't see no lift station between here and there.
Lisa Logan, 402 Maryland. To the engineer, sir, you said that there will be adequate capacity at full build out, but does that max out the city so that the additional lots that have never had anything on them and the additional smaller developments that come in will not have access to enough?
No, this development will not hinder any future improvements within the city.
Is it Chandler Touchton, 106 St. Charles. Are you saying that this is gonna be all by itself in its wastewater, not with Mexico Beach, if it's not gonna be affected at all? If we're not gonna be affected at all?
No, ma'am, this development will pull its water and send its sewer through the city's water and sewer infrastructure, which upstream and downstream
Right.
comes from Bay County.
But you're saying that there's gonna be enough room for anybody within the city to have enough
Yes.
Now, are you going by average for yearly average use, or are you going by average for June, July, and August use? Because there's a big difference in the amount of stuff that's being used in different times.
If I may interrupt for just a few minutes, the way these questions are going, it might be a good time for me to kind of go through a little bit more of the technical side of things. My name is Chris Short. I'm with Dewberry. We are the agent and engineer for the applicant and developer on this effort. As has been mentioned, the town village plan unit development is a 478 acre plan unit development. 554 acres of that is going to be, it's 478 of the TMU developed area, along with 76 acres of preservation, for a total of 554 acres. As you can see, we got development on the north and south side of 98. The total number of residential units proposed is 944 units, with a density of 1.97 units per acre. And it's a mix of townhomes, apartments, single-family residential, and commercial. We went through and as part of this process, let me just kind of talk you through kind of how we got to this point, and then we'll get into some of the technical aspects of everything. As Bridget mentioned, shortly after Hurricane Michael, the first concept plans for the city of Mexico or for the St. Joe Company were presented. Those just involved the north side of 98. They underwent concept review with the city administrator and mayor, provided a city council update with plan preview on March 12th, 2019, and then followed that up with the open houses on March 26th and 28th of 2019, at which point they took some of the concerns that were presented at those public meetings and did some things within the plan to try to address or offset those concerns. From that point, now that they had kind of an overall concept plan, we got involved, and we were involved with the concept plan preparation. We prepared and presented a PUD report. And what this report does is it goes through just all of the compliance with the LDR, the items that we are proposing outside of the LDR, and your water demand, sewer demand, talking about the environmental side of things and all of that. I'll get into some specifics about each element of that. From there, the pre-application conference in August of 2019. Then we filed the application with the overall concept plan and the PUD report. That's where Mr. Crook came in with Panhandle Engineering. He reviewed in the initial time. We responded to comments. Then there was another review and another response to comments. And then finally, from August 8th to December 17th, that was the whole period where our report and concept plan was under review with compliance with the LDR, and then just in general concurrency with the city's services in terms of water and sewer and all of those things. And then really that brought us to the planning board meeting that we had last week. So as you can see, we've kind of gone through a couple iterations of review with Panhandle Engineering. But let me get into more of the specifics about the water and sewer since those concerns were expressed. For the water and sewer, what we did was we took the pre-storm year of water and sewer usage, basically saying, not taking into account any reduction due to the storm. We took the previous 12 months and identified the peak months. So in terms of the water and sewer, you're basically looking at July of 2018 in terms of what the peak usage was. From there, we had our development demands for all of this put together. Keeping in mind, this is a master plan, a concept plan that is spaced out over 20 years. So we took all of those 20 years, all the residential uses, commercial uses, even the irrigation demand that is going to be happening in 20 years, and added that to the year prior to the hurricane. And that is what was used to determine the capacity of the city's demands that they are able to provide, and the sewer treatment capacity that is provided by Bay County to the city. in regards to the sewer capacity, it was identified in the report and will be a part of the overall development plan in the next 20 years, that the St. Joe Company will be getting with Bay County to increase the city's available capacity that is allocated by Bay County. So that's going to be something that's going to be, an increase for the city as well.
I got a question on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the city is only allowed 0.473 million gallons a day, okay? You're gonna require 400,000 plus gallons a day at full run out, which basically doubles the city requirement. Have you got a plan in place as to when you're gonna make changes to increase this? Because based on the LDR, these changes have to be in place before people can occupy that space.
Absolutely, and something else to keep in mind with this plan unit development application is this vote, this proposal for approval, it does not authorize any development of, it agrees in concept with the development, but it does not say, yes, go forth and build 216 apartment units. At each time, at each phase over the next 20 years, we will have to prepare a development order application, and at which time we'll use updated numbers. Like I said, we're using the information that was available to us now. We used the year prior to Hurricane Michael as our demands that were available to compare capacity. But over the next 20 years, as each phase moves in and is designed and ready for development, we'll have to come back before the planning board and go back before the city council with updated numbers, using the best data that we have at the time. And at that point, the city will have to sign off and say, yes, we're good. Or if we hit a point, ideally, we would see it coming, so us personally as Dewberry didn't get caught holding on to an application. But at some point, the city would say, hey, we're at capacity, we're 90% capacity, or hey, we don't have the capacity for this phase and we won't be approved until measures are taken to adequately address that and provide the additional capacity.
Okay, let me ask another question.
Yes,
What's the city's current capacity?
For water or sewer?
For sewer?
For sewer, that is addressed in, let's see,
You have to excuse me, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and I have trouble reading this book.
that is addressed basically in the section beginning on page 7 of the submitted PLED report. The city of Mexico Beach is allocated 0.473.
I've already said that, but what is the current usage?
The current usage, so using July 2018, the sewer flow for the city basically projected out to 0.08793 MGD.
Okay, and how much is the town development gonna pull?
So our total demand for all, the 20-year build out.
No, I'm just talking about phase one, see if we can support phase one.
Okay, well, phase 1 is going to be, let's see, that's actually going to be the 216 unit apartment, and that comes out to 44,982 gallons per day.
Okay, so the city can handle that based on current usage in that,
Correct.
without any changes being made.
Correct. And actually, in the PUD report, we identify using the cumulative, going phase by phase. We identify the point at which the available capacity for treatment allocated to the city will be exhausted, and that would be basically phase 4 of development. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, there is adequate capacity. That will allow time for the negotiations between St. Joe and Bay County, whatever means needs to happen to provide more allocation to the city will be able to happen by that point.
Let me question you on that, the method to provide more that you just spoke of. In 2016, when Sugar Sands came to the city and we are under a contract to provide water and sewer to Sugar Sands, as well as a number of other issues, but I spoke to the wastewater treatment plant operator to gather information at that time, and he told me that with that development and a number of others, the city would soon reach capacity, and the only other way to get extra capacity is to buy it if it's available from the other 4 cities that are on the plant with us. And the only one who has available spare capacity is Springfield. If they do not have the extra to sell us or are unwilling to sell it to us, the only alternative is to build a new wastewater treatment plant. At that time, it was a cost of $60 million. And the cities who use it would be responsible. So is this correct?
You know, I'm not aware of previous conversations that have been made. You know, that's part of the negotiation process that St. Joe will go through with the county, is discussing the availability of purchase from other municipalities. If not, then improvements can be made to their treatment plant, and they can modify their permit with DEP to allow DEP to say, yes, you can provide X more, you know, MGD for treatment, that then can be allocated.
So is this not a question that should be answered before a PUD application is approved? Because you've got phases 1 through 3 that have adequate, and then after that, you don't know. So shouldn't this be thought out in advance?
Well, I believe it is thought out. It is identified that, you know, at a certain point that those upgrades will have to be made. And at that point, if those upgrades are not made, then development order approval for those subsequent phases for actual construction doesn't get approved. Because at that time, we may be looking at a very different landscape as well in terms of demand. It may, you know, treatment demand may go up, it may go down, you know, but that's, you know, using the information available right now, that point of improvement or additional capacity has been identified. That might be a moving target over these 20 years. You know, certain developments may not happen, certain developments may come on that were not expected. But taking the information that's available now, that timeline has been identified. And again, this planned unit development does not authorize actual construction of any single phase of these 18 phases planned out over 20 years. It's just kind of a conceptual approval by the city that will allow us to move forward with this master plan, but each subsequent phase will have to still come before the city. It'll have to go through the review process with the engineers, through Public Works. It'll have to be signed off on by the county, and then it'll have to come before the planning board and then the city council.
One clarification, when you're talking capacity, you're looking at July of 18.
Correct.
Those 12 months when we were fully wide open.
Correct.
All the houses are built, so.
Yep. All the houses are built, and that's your peak month pretty much for any municipality because of, you know, you have people here on vacation. In July, you know, the 4th of July and all that, that's typically your peak month anyways.
All right, so you're not taking into consideration for the next X number of years, how many homes we don't have?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, a comment that could be helpful. The conversation about capacity, it was roughly 3 years ago. The city did enter agreement with Bay County to increase its capacity. I'm not versed on the exact numbers, but that time period back a few years ago when there was concern that the city was getting close to its maximum capacity, the city did make arrangements with Bay County to increase capacity a few years ago.
My recollection too is we actually took some Gulf County residents, put them on our sewer system in order to capture some of that capacity that we were already paying for.
How many people per unit were you estimating on these 900 plus units? What's your average persons per unit?
It'd be, let's see, the approximate population would be 2,832. So each unit type, correct.
It's 3 people,
Yeah.
if you do the math.
Yeah, and some of the unit types is you know, maybe a little less than that, but it averages out to about 3 people.
Okay, so if the average is 3, what's the high season usage? I mean, because in these homes, there could be, I mean, if it's gonna be like the Pier Park, Panama City Beach kind of thing, and that kind of an arrangement, you could have 6 to 8 people in these homes.
But remember, the north side of 98 is gonna be primary. So the north side of 98 is gonna be focused on, we're not gonna allow any short-term rentals there. It's gonna be focused on primary living for workers, for residents, for anybody who needs permanent housing, not the weekly turn of vacation rental.
Okay, so you might have 2 to 3 then on the north side, but what about the south side? Are you gauging 2 to 3 on the south side? Yeah, on the beach, on all those single-family homes?
I got you right.
On 50-foot lots? Crammed together, sorry.
Single family homes, 2.5 is the average, 2.5 to 3.
And you should be looking at the high number, the July number. The same thing as what's gonna happen to the beach.
Well, we're considering the July number in terms of the background usage for the city, but over a yearly period in determining the yearly demand, it averages out to basically 3 units or 3 individuals per household. You're gonna have some that have 1 person in them, you're gonna have some that have more, but basically the numbers, they average out for these types of calculations to where it's 3 residents per unit.
On a coastal beachfront? Or is this a national average?
For it's standard for single family residential.
You need to look at coastal. Sorry, you need to look at coastal. The same thing, my biggest issue is if you're taking that number and you're in a very isolated beach area, isolated, and you've got, call it 250 homes, they will be near full at capacity in the summertime. That's what happens. And you have a limited, I don't know the footage there, but it's limited. And you're gonna have not only these 250 homes with anywhere from 4 to 8, 10, 12 guests, we won't even talk parking, and then couple that with what's on the north side, and that beach can't support it. I guarantee it can't support it. That's, you need some coastal numbers.
Well, when it comes to actual doing the utility permitting for each phase, when it comes to the development order process, the design that goes into each of those phases outside of this high level conceptual does take into account a peaking factor on top of the standard 3 residents per unit. Then it applies a peaking factor depending on population that can vary between 3.5 times that and 4 times that in terms of the peak factor for that calculation for the utilities.
Okay,
So there's the concern.
Let's agree to disagree. In the back?
Yes, Debbie Allen, 106 20th Street. My concern is sanitation. What are we gonna do about trash services? We already have a problem with trash services. And if the city's gonna provide it, how are we gonna provide it?
Good question.
Can I? Please do.
Departments will have a centralized trash compactor. We will have a sanitary company to come up and pick it up once a week and carry it off. It will not be a burden on the city.
How's it
But
gonna
if
be
it's
picked
a
up
part
then?
of the city, how can it not be a burden on the city? And when the houses and stuff come in, you come down the road in July, come down 98 in July, and you're gonna see what we're talking about, because when these homes and things get sold, they're gonna rent them out, and there's gonna be 20 people in there, and there's gonna be 500 garbage bags sitting in front of the house, and 20 bears.
Jim, you've already spoken. Anybody else in the back?
Different issue.
Okay, hold on, let's finish this one up. Anything?
I have a question for St. Joe. Basically, you guys are the elephant here. We're not gonna stop. You're gonna do this one way or the other. You look at your design phase, you look at your boat ramp area. You just went back and you listened to us. I mean, I've been bitching about this since a year ago at all your meetings. You added all the extra property in, but there ain't no extra ramps or nothing else. You have 500 and something acres. You look out here, you got single family homes, you have around here, and all of a sudden now you're cramming in these apartments. Why don't you even think about maybe redoing your plan and reversing it? Put the apartments at the other end of your property. Have your single family homes up here. Put a little buffer, make it look nice. The people here, we're not gonna stop you, but why don't you try to make people happier and redesign your project a little bit? And just move it around and put a buffer in there. You have plenty of room to do it.
We had looked at a couple of different things in that regard. Sorry. And most of that, so with the commercial, most of the traditional development models will tell you to cluster your denser housing around commercial, because that gives those people an opportunity to kind of walk to those commercial facilities.
If you put the apartments at the other end and put your commercial and bring your single family housing up this way, it'll match the single family housing that's already here. You don't have apartments out here. Reverse it all. and your plan will be the same, it'll just be backwards. And I'm sure if you put a little buffer in there between the ramp area, a little bit of space, people are gonna be a lot happier than looking at what you have right now.
I have a question. Bill Joe Wacker, 115 Street. My question is.
Could you stand up, please,
Yeah,
so we
my
can
question
hear
is,
you?
how are you gonna support all these people? We have no gas stations. And what are you gonna do? 2,000 people? Come on. 3,000.
Don't have a grocery store either.
Not, yeah, what are we gonna do? Not everybody can go to the base and shop, you know?
They're talking 20 years.
One at a
Well, okay,
time.
when's this first little, phase gonna start?
Yeah, it's still 214 units.
We do have a development order application in right now for the first phase of the apartments, the 216 apartment units. Again, you know, our focus has always been housing. The reconstruction of Tyndall Air Force Base is a huge initiative for Bay County and for this region. And the Air Force has stated on a number of different times that housing on the ground for the workers and the rebuilding effort is their biggest concern right now.
Okay, the thing is if people get ID cards, they're not gonna go shop on the base. So if they're workers, like contractors, they're not gonna go shop on the base, they gotta go shop and get their gas somewhere. That's the bottom line, you know?
What's your completion? How long are you talking about it taking to complete? Is it like?
The apartments?
Yeah.
Of phase one?
Yeah.
18 months? When would they be ready for
About,
leasing?
we would envision it started in the summer, it'd be probably 18 months, 18 to 20 months.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Somebody over here?
But you're starting now, like today,
In the
18
summer.
months for today?
He said anticipated starting for the first phase, which would be the apartments, would be the summer, and then about 18 months from the
System,
summer.
2020.
I got
Now.
Because honestly,
Summer
I'm gonna
of
tell you right
2020.
now, and if people don't have a place to go shop, or get gas, or do this kind of stuff, they're not gonna rent your apartments. That's the bottom line. I mean, I know that they may need them, but without the infrastructure or the way to support these people, they're not gonna wanna come down here. I mean, I wouldn't want to spend that kind of money in an apartment if I didn't even have a gas station.
I need a clarification. My understanding was we're in less than 1/4 of our capacity in Mexico Beach right now, right today. Is that correct?
In terms of water, sewer.
Sewer.
In terms
Water's
of
easy.
sewer, yes. The sewer currently, the peak month provided, or the demand for treatment for the peak month, which was prior to the hurricane, was 0.0873 NGD.
Less than 1/4 of the capacity that they have right now?
Correct.
Okay.
Which is 0.473.
Okay. All right, let's move on from the water and sewer.
Bill, just one question.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, everything's kind of whited out here in the bottom and all your plans.
Yeah.
Where does this road dump into?
It doesn't. It does not dump into 44th Street. There's not gonna be a connection.
We can't hear.
It is not going to connect into 44th Street. We have an access right here that DOT built when they did the 36th Street Bridge Replacement Project, and we have gated that off. So that can be accessible for emergency purposes, but it's not our intention to open it up or leave it open. We have intentionally shown the boulevard stopping in the future expanded boat parking area. So that gives the boat trailers more connectivity throughout the commercial and different ways to get out to the Highway 98. It's not our intention to put a through street and dump a bunch of boat traffic or our traffic onto these residential streets that are 44th Street and 36th Street.
So your only egress and ingress is off of where the boat ramp is?
Right now, yes, but future phases, we've got multiple connections.
Future what?
West?
In future phases, we've got multiple connections to Highway 98 to the west.
Thank you.
Last week, we were told that was going to be the first phase of apartments, then the second phase of apartments, and the hotel within 12 months. How did that change?
The hotel is, just from what I've read on the timeline, is 2039. As far as the apartment phase, it says 19, which we're long past, so
Right.
you'll have to tell us what the the new numbers, they would have to submit new schedules.
Yeah, I mean, this schedule will just have to be something, as we move along, it just gets updated. Because of the process, you know, that we've gone through, we're already in 2020. And so the first phase of the apartments and the townhomes were planned to be the first couple of improvements within the first 6 months of approval. But the apartments, the second phase of the apartments wasn't until the fourth phase of the overall plan of development.
Do you have beach access for the apartments planned?
There's been some discussion with the city about building getting a grant to build a path underneath the bridge, and we've agreed with the city that we would build whatever future connections we needed to do to access that. In addition, I think previously the city had a pavilion or something down on the beach by that side, and we've had some discussions with the city about, I think they were parking on some of our property down there, and I think I think the residents have been using the beach, a portion of that beach as the dog beach. But we've been talking to the city about potentially accommodating some parking down there when they do their pavilion construction.
Well, if you're just looking at that little orange part as beach access, that's all the beach access that everything is gonna be able to use publicly?
No, we'll have some opportunities. This is not a good plan. We've got, this one shows the trails and connections down from the north side of 98. For whatever reason, they didn't show up on.
But there's no
site plan.
parking.
So we've got, we've ever parked here at the commercial areas, and then we're looking at, options for having parallel parking along the north side of the street down here so that people could access some of these beach access points also.
Yeah, that is a 50-foot right of way, so it would allow for on-street parking to provide for some
So the homeowner's gonna let you park?
Well, on the north side, not directly in front of their homes. And there's other pockets, as we get into the actual design, there are other pockets along here, along these other roadways, adjacent to these access pathways that would accommodate public parking as well.
This not being a gated community, so this Mexico Beach, of course, will be responsible for all roads, water, sewer repairs within that community.
Correct.
Okay.
On the diagram in the front, can you show where the parking for the garden apartments are going to be? And is there something that shows where the parking area for the garden apartments are?
Yes, so this is the garden apartments area up here north of this, let me put those papers down.
Why don't you walk right down there?
All right.
This group has seen
So specifically, the garden apartments, these are the garden apartments, so all the parking for
That's gonna
those.
be over there?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the lighter gray there.
Okay.
Now, the garden apartments are not the same as the apartments.
Yes, that is the phase one, the apartments, yes.
So the garden apartments are the phase one apartments.
Correct. Yeah, it's just.
And they're all on
interchangeable.
the northerly side of the access road?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Cause my thing is when I went fishing, right when they opened up an extra week of fishing in the middle of the hurricane, town's empty, and they were lined up all the way from the access road, all the way to the entrance.
Mhm.
And I know that you're adding to the parking area for the boat trailers, but I still don't think that's gonna be enough to accommodate the extra traffic you're gonna see in that boat ramp. Yeah, that was during the hurricane. I think, and then is that the access road actually going into the, extra parking area for the boats?
Here, yeah, we have a couple different connection points.
No, I'm asking the green area, the green shade, is that the additional parking for the boat ramp? No, the light. green
Oh,
shade.
the yellow, yeah.
The
Yeah,
yellow.
that is area that has been identified as expanded
So
parking area.
so actually the road goes actually through the extended parking area.
Correct.
So you have to pull across the road to access the back part of that parking area also.
Yeah, and we provide a driveway there, and you can, either we connect up to the existing driveway here through the existing, we have a connection through here to the parking, a connection through here to the parking, and then a connection through here. And this is a conceptual showing just kind of an idea of what can be.
You need to come down opening day of tackle season and see the pressure that's on that boat ramp. And I think that the money that St. Joe is spending, I think they should do some more renovations to that boat ramp, maybe widening it, giving us a little bit more parking. Because right now, we can't even accommodate our citizens that we have now with everybody else that comes in and uses that boat ramp. So.
The weekend use, no.
St. Joe Company did a great job doing the canal and the boat launch.
Thank you.
Yes. Somebody back here?
Yeah, Bill.
Okay. And then anybody from this side speak yet? Let's let them.
I used to work for Arvada St. Joe, and I watched when boom hit, the bubble hit, all the master plans went out the window, and they started farming off all over it. HOAs changed. How can you guarantee that won't happen?
Well, where our business is subject to cycles, and a lot of the initiatives that we're putting forth now are market-driven. Certainly, if we're having an apartment community, Jim can speak to, they want people living there. They don't want empty apartments, so I think in that case, there's probably either an adjustment in that's okay, adjustment in rental rates, but I can't speak for him. But again, the goal is to have a community where people are living here, and we'll have a homeowners association, and on the north side, we want primary residence. On the south side, we, don't like to have a lot of speculation in our communities, because that's when you get into problems where the boom happens and then the bottom falls out and people can't pay their bills, and it just goes downhill from there. We had a number of communities in west of here where we managed where we took control of the homeowners association. We managed and kept the HOA going. We kept the property up, and we would do a similar commitment here if something like that happened, because we don't want to be a blight in a city that we're a resident of, and we don't, we just don't want to have things go south, because, we're proud of what we do, and we want people to like it, and we know that we have to keep up the community in order to keep up values wherever they fall in the market.
Good question. Do we have any new topics? Anybody wants to, in the yellow shirt, sir?
Yes, I'm Brad Black, husband of Judith Black, 1004 15th Street. I appreciate the work, I mean, your type of work, and know how much effort you put into it. The thing about water and sewer, I know there's enough of a question in my mind as to whether or not we need to secure rights to additional water, additional sewer at this point in time. Your timeframe for development is starting out with your apartments, your townhomes. You're built in the first 3-4 phases. You're building like almost 60% of the total housing units that are going on site. According to your PUD report, that may be separate from the engineering report, it looked like you hit a roadblock, and that's why I think time flies so quickly that you really ought to, on behalf of everyone in this city, you as property owner, the city, and the people who live here and come this year, it seems to me that we ought to really kind of secure those rights for sewer and water, see if they're necessary to secure them, get an LOI, a letter of intent, just to know that it's there. I appreciate dearly the comments about parking, because we have a lot of people here that will come and, we're Americans. We drive everywhere. we don't walk everywhere. I'm riding a bike through neighborhoods, I haven't seen a bike on the street in about 3 weeks, whenever I'm riding. A few walkers, and I realize this is January. But, you know, some of the places I came up with for parking would be, we looked at your parking lot where the retail office may be on the south side of the road. There may be a gap in parking there, but I think you're gonna need a lot more than that with, how many residents? 944 residents, some on the south, I don't know, 300 number. They may indeed enjoy the walk and get down there, but north is too far. They'll be driving cars, and if there's no parking down there to get to this gorgeous beach that's probably there, because in my mind, you've never been on it, it's undiscovered. Maybe for all of you. And those residents would benefit by getting to that beach. If we don't have a parking plan, it spills over to the other beaches and into the neighborhoods. So we need to work on that. The idea about parking along the streets, great idea, but I think it also needs to be delineated at this time as part of this process. The other option that St. Joe's probably not gonna like, but they do own that strip of land that's adjacent to the beach on the, I gather, the west end of that beach. I mean, is a portion of that possibly used as a parking lot? Gravel, something like that.
Public access.
You know, just to accommodate, those individuals. Let's see. I do have a question about density, and I was looking at your very extensive package, last night, and actually several days before. I noticed there is a road alignment along the, or a future road on the north side of the north parcel. Want me to point out? Right through here, and where I caught it was on your landscape plan, your open space plan. Because all you have bush shade here, and then what's that? And then notice it's an O. And it's the future right of way. Is this a right of way for a road that's coming into the near term, or is it something that's a long-term plan?
It's a long-term plan, it's, DOT's, I think they call it the Gulf to Bay Highway.
Okay.
So it's a future road right-of-way that we've worked with them on right-of-way agreements for a long time there, and we've always preserved
Okay.
it in that particular location.
So I'd like to pass around to the council members here, if you pass that. My question is, in terms of density averaging, I get that, I used to work in planning, okay? And you followed density averaging, you know, as it's intended to be in planning and development. So my question is, that I think is an answer that may need to be asked or sought, is that you calculated your overall density for your housing based on this stuff that you all see in this kind of green and gold. What's this here? That number of acres times 2 units an acre that is in your planning ordinance calculates the 944 units that you have in your plan. My question is does this portion, because it's road, that portion, does it need to be taken out and then a rebalancing of the calculation based on that? That's a legal question, eminent domain. I wonder if it needs to be asked.
I think in the land development code, or the comp plan, and Nick can probably attest to this, that, the density calculation is based on the gross acre area for that land use category, and the property that you reference is currently zoned, and has a land use category of tourist mixed use.
Okay. To me, it raised a question. And where I picked up on it was, out of your total 544 acres, you preserved 78 acres for preservation for its zoning district, and took that out of your calculation appropriately, and then used the remainder to calculate the density. And that made me pause and ask that question about this future road. That may be a question I think the city needs to consider.
The definition for density and gross density in the land development code is total number of dwelling units provided by total site area, including land dedicated or proposed to be dedicated for public or private right of way, so I think the calculation's correct.
They couldn't really hear you, Nick, but I think what he said was that based on our formula in the plan, it is calculated correctly.
Mr. Bill?
Who's somebody in the back? Who's behind me? Speak it up on us.
Terry Harrison, I live at 206 Mississippi Drive. My wife and I have been here since we bought our place in 1998. I don't really have a question. What I do is a food for thought. All the residents that live here, whether you newly arrived or you've been here for a long time, it's the impact of quality of life is my big concern. Because if you say, well, we can accommodate the sewage, we can accommodate the water usage, we can accommodate the traffic. And my question is do we really want to go in and try to encompass, keep enlarging and enlarging? If you have a quality of life, if you pick this place to live, and you see this changing, so we can build a gas station, which I'd love that, okay? We can build a grocery store. When you get to the point where you say, you know, this creeped up on me, because I remember whatever, when, you know, a few years ago, before the storm, we had a standing room only, when we had a big hotel wanted to come in and plant itself right in the middle of Mexico Beach. And it was standing room only, and it was a pretty large building at the time, and we encompassed a lot of people, and it was just voted down. I'm not trying to vote you guys down, okay? I understand the need for growth. I understand the need to house people that want to come here and live here and be here, that want to enjoy what we enjoy. And I want that, but I don't want an overreach. And it really scares me, because I want to be where I've chosen to be, and I don't want it to change, and I have to just kind of absorb it. If this is the time to say something, then I want to say something now. I don't want to feel like I regret it. I don't want you to feel like you should have said something, and you don't want it to change without you. So we just need to be aware. Go slowly, that's fine. Take baby steps, that's fine. You know, have some growth, but don't make it where we're already thinking there's not going to be enough water, there's not going to be enough sewer, there's going to be too many people, it's going to change. I can't even go out and you know, let my kids ride their bikes or walk my dogs or whatever. And I just want people to think about it. Don't let it change your village. Don't let it change where you are.
Those apartments are gonna be.
Okay, anybody else? Either way.
Ellen Hutchinson on 40th Street. During your opening remarks, you made the comment, mom and pop alternative, and I was just kind of curious what that meant. So what it means from our perspective is we're not marketing out there to big brand retailers. We're not seeking any franchises. Our hope is that, you know, people who had businesses in Mexico Beach that got damaged in the hurricane and they're not able to reopen, is that, you know, this is a viable alternative for them to consider reopening their store in a new location.
Which we like. Yes, sir.
My name's Charles Haskett. I actually just moved here this summer, and I'm actually a multi-family developer, so it's good to be on this side of the table, and honestly, it's a lot more comfortable. I printed out a few, if you don't mind just pass those down that way, just kind of points I'd like to make, and there's a lot of information that I know I'm not going to be able to squeeze in here to 3 minutes. So my first point, really, I just want to skip that. A lot of that's already been addressed. But first, I'd just like to ask, who in this room lives here? Raise your hand. How many of you were comfortably in your home in March of 2019? More than I thought. But it's not enough to consider a practical neighborhood meeting where people were back in their sound minds and are able to say, hey, this is what's good for my community when they're focusing on their home. I just think it's fair to take a step back and take that in consideration. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about is the boat ramp, and you partially addressed it. And in the packet here that I've given the city, and I appreciate all your volunteers, there are a lot of precedents in the development code, the city's comp plan, that this is an ideal time to just ask St. Joe, give us the vote rate, give us that property, so we can develop it for what's right for our citizens. Matter of fact, land development, go to 306. Dedications for land of public parks access. The city council shall be permitted to require an applicant to make reasonable contributions, including but not limited to. Goal 7A of the Mexico Beach Comp Plan provides sufficient and adequate recreation and open spaces. Objective 7.1, correct and improve the existing need for recreation facilities. If this isn't the ideal place and ideal time to take control of that boat ramp and amenitize it for the public, I don't know what it is, and there'll never be another opportunity to do it. Not with this much letters.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Amen.
Okay. A second question I wanted to make.
You've got 1 minute, by the way.
Okay. And this is really a question from an engineering standpoint. And I appreciate that you guys are taking the time to kind of back this out of it. But why doesn't a main arterial collector road such like this make more sense than just coming straight through here? Why doesn't it feed this whole side of it and reduce the amount of entrances on Highway 98?
Well, I think that the intent, and, you know, from a land planning standpoint, Bridget can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the intent was, you know, to not have, you know, all of these, the apartment buildings, everything going through the single-family residential. It kind of keeps the traffic a little separate, provides entrances per use. You have the single-family residential, you have the townhomes, and then you have the apartments and commercial. Now, in regards to these accesses, I mean, this is 90 acres. So before actual final approval and construction can happen for any of these accesses, you know, it's gonna have to be signed off on by DOT. DOT is gonna require whatever upgrades, whatever safety upgrades are required for that particular phase. This plan has been presented to DOT. They did not have a concern about the number of access points along the way. But that's kind of the gist of how we got to this point.
Okay, and I just have one more quick point. Like I said, I'm a multifamily developer. Home Core is a group that I'm familiar with. They build a nice 3-story garden style box. My problem is I think this site demands a much nicer product. And I'm not down in your product. I build products that look identical to it. But this deserves an elevated interior corridor. It will absolutely meet the demand that's here now for workforce housing, but that is a short-term solution with long-term consequences. And I own property immediately adjacent to this, so.
I don't think that we can get $22,000 to $2,500 a month rent. That's not the market here. The market's for the teachers, first responders, and the enlisted people out of the base.
Okay. Somebody else, different topic, same topic?
Donald Warbacher, 115 15th Street. I hear you keep talking about teachers, people from Tyndall, first responders. That's pie in the sky. It's not means that who you're going to generate. And Tyndall isn't going to be able to support you right now with what they got, I don't feel. And where are all the new teaching jobs coming from? Where are all the first responder jobs coming that need to come to Mexico Beach where we need 214 garden apartments?
Worried about police. Yeah, we don't have that many police officers.
Anybody else?
I just had a question about wetland restoration. You know, you're taking up a lot of wetlands. Where are you putting new ones?
So all of the wetland impacts have been permitted through the state and the Army Corps of Engineers already. Through that process, you don't necessarily, you know, have to create new ones. There are mitigation measures that the state and the federal, the Army Corps of Engineers and Florida Department of Environmental Protection require. So this entire development, this whole plan unit development area was permitted through both of those agencies, and those permits are still active. So the mitigation for wetland impacts has already been weighed and measured by those agencies.
And where's the stormwater going?
Well, you know, we kind of have some planned areas for stormwater. The first phase of the garden apartments, which we will talk about, that is a little more nailed down because we have geotechnical engineering reports and full design. But the stormwater ponds will be spread throughout all phases of these developments. Each phase that comes in for a development order will be required to meet both the city and the state requirements as far as water treatment, water quality, providing treatment for the runoff to remove pollutants, as well as water quantity if it's not a tidal discharge, meaning that if it's not a tidally influenced discharge, we're not going to be sending more water off-site after development than what was going off-site prior to development. So that's more of a phase-by-phase thing as far as the specifics, but we provided master planning kind of based on our experience that when we get geotechnical engineering, what we thought might be a wet detention pond based on the geotechnical report may come back and we may have to change based on the investigation at that time. But the specifics about stormwater will be addressed on a phase-by-phase basis.
Okay, about ready to wrap it up? Yes, ma'am.
Eileen Luco, 421 New Mexico Drive. I know you've mentioned a lot tonight, but Mexico Beach, how is Mexico Beach gonna support fire, we don't have money. Mexico Beach doesn't have money. You're putting more people in that than what's all in Mexico Beach. We don't have hardly adequate police protection, fire protection, and yet how are we gonna support all that?
Understood, and Martin, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but developments, you know, whenever you come on and get a development order and go to, you know, prior to construction, you have to pay impact fees based on the size of your development. What those impact fees do is they go towards funding your emergency services, your parks and recreation. So the development itself will have to pay impact fees based on what is proposed, and that's where the additional funding comes from to provide
Impact fees are
improvements.
one-time thing.
Yes.
One-time thing.
Well, the additional,
If it
you
don't
know-
go for 10 years, the city still hasn't maintained the additional public works people, fire, police department, et cetera.
But it also improves the tax
Fees won't
agencies
pay
as
the
well.
salaries of the additional people, you and I know.
Is it correct this land is still
Between the Fort Worth
taxed
Police
as
Department and
agricultural
yours.
land? And once it begins being developed, it'll be
Correct.
taxed as residential, mixed use, and commercial property?
Correct.
Okay. Two more. Joy?
1403 Highway 98. So, now that you've heard all the concerns of everyone, I didn't quite understand what you meant about the coming out of the road and not going in, I guess, residential. So, but we're gonna do that through other residentials. I mean, I know you say that's not gonna happen, but it will happen. But now that you've heard everyone, are you willing to make any changes?
I'm seeing a no.
That's all I know.
I'm seeing a no.
We have made a lot of, because you guys all give good feedback. You provide, you raise points that, you know, we can't always think about or don't always think about. To Chris's point earlier, you know, what we're at right now is we're showing a land use plan that has different land uses, it's shown where we're gonna put them. And that's what we're seeking approval on right now, and also the development program. As we come in with each individual development phase, yes, we're showing commercial down here, but by the time we get to actually building it, it may look a little bit different than that. And that gives us an opportunity to incorporate additional feedback at different times in the market in response to market conditions and in response to resident concerns. So we feel like we're set on the apartments. We've got engineering and a development order application in with the city. We've identified boat ramp parking and potential area for expansion of those facilities. As we come in with each other individual development order, it will be in this location or this location or this location, but it might look a little bit different from what is shown on this rendering.
Okay, one more?
Mr. Bill, somebody wants to know, how is this gonna affect the kids going to school? If more kids come into the community, will they be able to still go to Port St. Joe, or is that gonna change and kids would have to, because it would be, you know, more children going over there, would they have to go to Panama City schools? Would that change for our town?
I don't know, it seems like, Jim, and help me on this, there is some language in the comp plan that talks about, working with both Tyndall and the school system if we're aware of a substantial, plan that's coming up that would increase the number of students. So that's a question I can't answer, but I know that, pretty sure that it tells that we're responsible for advising the school system, hey, that it looks like we might have 200 more children.
Yeah, the only thing the comp plan provides, that's policy 1.8.9, cities shall retain a non-voting position for a school board representative on the planning and zoning board to consider changes that may happen in the future. But there's nothing in here which says, you know, we've got anything. It's just something we're gonna have to figure out.
If I can make a comment, you know, this came up in the last school board election in Bay District Schools. McAllister was the one who lost that, but he wanted to send the kids from Mexico Beach back to Bay County schools. That's not a decision that's gonna be made by this body. It's gonna be made by Bay District Schools. And, you know, at the present time, Bay District School pays money to Gulf County to provide that educational support. So that's not something that we have any control over, and that can change at any time. The other thing, the word on the street is that Tyndall Elementary will be expanding to 8th grade very soon. And, you know, all of these things are gonna play into what happens there. But this group, we won't have any control over that. That decision will be made by Bay District Schools.
Okay. Thank everybody for their comments, and now I'm gonna open it up to close the public part of the meeting, open it up to the board for comments. Jim, I passed you over a couple times, I'm gonna give you the first crack at it.
Okay, I'm gonna address the comp plan, how this applies to the comp plan, and how it applies to the land development regulations. Nick? Everybody got one?
I share it, that's okay. Give that one to the
Okay,
audience.
this is the first page of the comprehensive plan. For those of you that aren't familiar with what the comprehensive plan is, it is the document that drives everything about future growth in Mexico Beach. And we just developed a new one. We started in August of 2017. And we started off with a meeting by asking citizens to come in. For those of you that participated in it, you'll know where I'm talking about. For those of you that aren't, this is what happened. We asked people to come in and we said, what do we want Mexico Beach to look like in the future? We had 35, 40 or so citizens actually come, probably as many as we've got in this room right now, who were able to say, this is what we want Mexico Beach to look like in the future. Okay, we broke them down into 3 different groups. Each group met on its own, came up with what they wanted, and then we took all 3 groups together, and to a man, everybody pretty much agreed with what you see on that paper right there. And that's what we want Mexico Beach, that's what they wanted Mexico Beach to look like. We developed the comp plan based on what people wanted, and then when we developed the LDR based on the comp plan. The main issue everybody wanted to see was they did not want to see Mexico Beach change. Okay, and if you can look at the standards we're talking about and what we want Mexico Beach there, if we're going to approve this PUD, then it has to be in accordance with what, as far as I'm concerned, the comp plan says it should be. Okay, change is inevitable, but what we need to do is make reasonable changes in a timely manner. And last time we had a meeting in addressing this, you know, the smart person when they plan, you know, plans for the worst and hopes for the best. Okay, from what I've seen here, it looks to me like they planned for the best and hope that the worst doesn't happen. And I'm not going to address any of the things you did. I'm just going to address what the comp plan says and what the LDR says. So I actually think before this board can make a decision, we need to ensure ourselves that the city has done its due diligence as far as the comp plan and the LDR is concerned. So I've got some questions for Panhandle Engineers and for the city manager. So if you'll answer my questions as appropriate, I want to address what's in the comp plan is required from the city before we can go forward with this. Okay, so the first thing is, we've already heard that the sewer element and the potable water, at least for phase one, are sufficient.
That's correct.
You agree with that? Okay, I see in some emails, you thought perhaps the lift station wasn't adequate to handle it, and you now think it is adequate to handle it.
I received more information, and yes, it is capable of handling the flows.
Okay, the PUD doesn't address solid waste. That's already been brought up by somebody in the audience, okay? Right now, standards are 4.5 pounds per person per day and 6.89 pounds for 1,000 square feet for non-residential. So I need to ask the city, what effect is that going to have on our capability to collect solid waste? And what steps will the city have to take to verify that they're going to have, you know, this capability before this building is complete?
Again, the apartment developer mentioned that it would.
No, I'm asking the city. This is not.
You asked me to answer the question, answering the question. The apartment developer is a commercial development. Commercial developments are responsible for their own debris hauling. It's not a city requirement for apartment developers. For residential developers, they pay a monthly fee, just like the current residents pay for a monthly fee. As additional residents will come online, additional personnel will come online to accommodate the additional services on residential. But the apartment component should be dealt with by the apartment person.
So the city won't be involved in waste disposal then?
Typically not for commercial developments.
Okay, answer that question. Okay, what changes need to be, and this is page 4.3, the comp plan, 4C 2.1. What changes need to be made in services currently provided by the city to ensure the standards of service are made during each phase of development?
Can you be more specific on standard?
For water, for wastewater, solid waste you've already addressed.
Okay, for water and wastewater, as mentioned, we have the capacity. They pay impact fees for the additional infrastructure that needs to be built. And then as they use it, they're paying for the maintenance for it based on fees that are calculated based per user.
Okay, but what, do we have to make any changes currently before this first phase is done?
I just mentioned, we have the capacity within the infrastructure that we have today.
Okay, the city must regulate, this is page 4.44D 1.2, stormwater. City must regulate new development to reduce stormwater impact on natural resources. Based on what I read, any runoff that comes from the retention pond will go into Salt Creek. What effect is that going to have in Salt Creek and on the canal?
I can tell you that today's standards for stormwater are much better than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and 20 years ago. The rigorous standards that they're going to have be far better than what we currently have.
Okay.
We hope to have those same standards when we do the master stormwater system for all of Mexico Beach.
Okay, page 7.2, 7.1.6, which deals with recreation and open spaces. Can the city verify that the levels of service for recreational facilities are going to be met by the PUD?
I believe you do have open space that's available to the total population, and there's some public parks that will be open to the total population. This is not a gated community that's going to create a park and then only the gated people can use it. This facility is part of the overall structure of Mexico Beach, and it'll have, I don't know if it's going to have ballparks or football fields or soccer fields,
but it will also have beach access. So again, this is not a gated community that once they build these trails, it's the only people that can use them. These are public trails, public roads, and public parks.
Okay, 7.1.7, is the city analyze the PUD to determine whether or not that the open spaces that they briefed here are appropriate for those designed activities?
I'm assuming that you've looked at the quantity of space that was required and you've met the requirements.
And the quality of space?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, page 9.3, section 9.3.1, which deals with levels of service. And it requires the city to use its annual budget for capital improvements to ensure levels of service meet existing future needs. And I'm sure impact fees become involved with that. So I guess what we're looking at here, I guess the question is, what effect will the PUD have on scheduled capital improvements in the future? Because we've already got a schedule of capital improvements in the comp plan. So what effect is this gonna have on future, because it's gonna have to be changed?
Again, this development will have capital improvements of its own, including the parks, and then the city will maintain those parks. But keep in mind, there is a tax base that comes from these units. These units don't evolve and then provide zero income to the community.
Okay, so
there is a tax base that comes from all these units, and without it, you couldn't afford to maintain.
Oh, so they're developing all the facilities and everything themselves?
Yes,
The city's not involved, okay. And, again, my last issue was on the LDR, and it's already been brought up very well. The city can require certain things from the developer. And the boat ramp, was mentioned. How about sidewalks and a multi-use path in the area? Those are some things that I think the city should, look at and maybe require them. And I think the boat ramp, at least from my perspective, as an avid fisherman, is probably a pretty good idea. So getting back to, you got your copy, I don't have, I gave away all my copies of the purpose and intent. Okay. Things that I'm concerned about right here on the intent of the city and the purpose. As you go down to the last paragraph, where things that this PUD are gonna have to do is, A, it's gonna have to promote the general welfare. I think pretty much can prevent congestion and overcrowding, that's been addressed. Pleasing area aesthetics, that's been addressed. Maintain public safety. Okay, that's an issue that was brought up there. We have to ensure that that's done. Provide circumstances and conditions necessary to maintain an adequate supply of affordable housing. I think with the price structure that you've mentioned, I think it does that very well. Provide infrastructure necessary to maintain the current level of services and provide additional infrastructure as required by growth. That's something the city's gonna have to consider and come up with a plan to do. Okay, that's something that probably be done later. And provide adequate recreational opportunities, recreation sites and facilities. That's something the city's gonna do. So as long as we require them to do that, that's gonna meet it too. But the bottom line is this looks at things staying the way they were, maybe the quoting Mayberry of the Gulf Coast. In my opinion, this is gonna make us look more like, not Panama City, but what's down the coast? No. Maybe. Huh? No, forget it. It's gonna make us look more like. Eddie should have written it.
He'll remember in a minute.
Yeah. But I think that's something we really need to consider if we really want to keep the city the way it was with, the small town atmosphere. I just consider that. I'm asking the council to consider that. If that's what we want to do, then you need to consider whether or not the PUD does that.
Nick, on the comment about sidewalks, I don't think anything in the proposal asks for any waiver of sidewalk requirements. We do have land development code sidewalk requirements. They haven't always applied to the kinds of individual building one house at a time development that you've seen in the past in the city, but I think generally they're gonna apply on this. They may have comments specifically about sidewalks and they have a plan. But just to kind of frame the big picture issue here, because we actually have two items in front of us. We have the plan unit development master plan, and then we also have this development order for the apartments. So separating those out a little bit, because the board's gonna need to look at those separately. They're gonna have to look at both. So the purpose of the plan, unit development plan, is really to show the areas on this map where certain kinds of uses would be, and generally how the density would be shown and clustered on this map. So the reason why it's important for this tourist mixed use category we're working with, it's not like your other categories, because it does have a 2 unit per acre residential maximum density. That's what you're used to, except the other categories allow residential, they start at 5 and go up. What's different about tourist mixed use though, is it also allows commercial and office uses, but it doesn't provide strict rules about how much and where. So a plan like this is important to try to figure out where's stuff gonna go. Because at 2 units per acre, you'd have gigantic lots with roads everywhere. The clustering on this is designed in part to get around some of the more environmental sensitive areas, and also to just establish, okay, where's the commercial going to be, and how much commercial will there be? So your first consideration of what the current hearing is just, what is this general plan, what are your recommendations on that? We talked a lot about the apartments, and we kind of need to, because everything blends together, but the apartments are actually a separate item that you'll address after you consider the overall plan. And the apartments, there's more detail on them because they're lined up to potentially be built in the near future. So all the information on things like the water and sewer has been collected. It's all been looked at more closely. The rest of this plan, if it gets adopted, there's going to be a lot more information and several more reviews and approvals before other things will get built. I would anticipate not just development orders, but plats for some of this. I mean, you've got a whole residential neighborhood on the north side of the road, a residential neighborhood on the south side of the road. So there would be a lot more review and approvals done. It's not like we're making an overall broad approval this month for everything to get built, and it's just gonna happen, and nobody's gonna know it's coming. There'll be several more approvals.
Potentially 19 more development orders.
Okay. Alex?
Over
you have anything?
20 years.
Yeah, listening to everybody, and I can't really disagree with anything said. To stop it, I personally believe that progress is good if it's handled adequately. I don't really like particularly this concept plan, and I get the feeling that she said it can't be changed. Because I don't like this access, just one access into this major area. And then what they showed here at some other map is, well, you don't your boat going through residential streets, okay? To me, this is a non-starter here, to go with one access into that entire development. You know, and you don't show that, you haven't mentioned it, and honestly, that would be a stopper for me. It's not a good concept, put in more access roads.
Show all the accesses, please.
Okay, so we have, this is an access going to the apartments and the commercial area. You do have some interconnectivity between the townhomes and this area here.
Access
But
off 98.
But this is another access off 98 from the south and from the north. From the north,
But
that's
what
the-
phase, but what phase?
But that is the townhome phase, so that is going to be phase 2.
So this, the first access.
This is first
That's
phase.
the only one that exists.
Correct.
You're gonna start phase 1 in September, so we're gonna have a lot of traffic coming in here, construction, while people are trying to launch their boats.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Okay, good point. Dave?
Show the rest of the
Okay,
accesses.
to continue, yes, this is the first phase access, this is city apartments and commercial area, maintaining through here the existing boat ramp road. There is a southern access to this commercial retail area along the interface of the townhomes, which was mentioned as phase 2, and single-family residential here, there's a northern access, there's a southern access at this point as well to the single-family residential. Here's another access on the north side for the single-family residential, and then another dual access north side and south side for single-family residential. So those are the access points.
Dave, you have any comments?
Yeah. Not often does a city have a single development that's going to double the size of their town. I tried to do some research today, and I could not find an example of a small community that had a development that is going to double the size of the town. There's a lot of impact. I have no doubt about St. Joe. They got their technical data in order. They got the ducks in a row, and they've got it right. But this whole deal has elements to it that's going to impact the city in many other ways outside of the legal things. I'm very concerned about parking. Now, I can see these apartments within the first month, they're all going to be rented out. 75% of them will be Airbnb. And, well, there's a lot of smart people.
There will be no Airbnb in these apartments.
And how will you stop it? How do you stop it?
If only the resident can live in the apartment.
How are you going to?
How are you going to dictate that only a residents live in an apartment?
We got 3,000 of them, sir, and we do it on every one of them.
We'll see how that works out. But that's a concern, and in the summertime, parking is going to be an absolute nightmare, and traffic in this area. I don't think there's any way to stop it, but I do think there is room for improvement to what they've got planned. And so, you know, I can't say I have any arguments against what they're doing. I just think there needs to be a little bit more thought put into several aspects of it.
Thank you, Dave. Ma'am?
Well, I can't find any real problem, with this as far as for the citizens of the city, of which I'm one. I'm all for development. We certainly need the tax base. We don't have what we had. I know that what we are going to have is going to be different. I think anyone who thinks it isn't, I can't agree with that thought process. I think that we have to give a little bit of consideration to each of these planning parts that they've gotten together and worked together and come up with viable solutions to what we need. I think they've heard what we have to say. I'm sure things will be tweaked as it goes along, and I think that we have to give them the opportunity to at least earn their money. I think that they know basically what they're doing. I like it. As a matter of fact, I would consider selling my property on First Street someday soon for an opportunity to live perhaps in one of these units. And that is exactly how I feel.
Thank you. Jack?
I'll start with a question. When you started out, you said that you heard the public loud and clear on boat ramp changes. When were the changes made to this place?
Well, so we have always been, and this is I guess the problem with being intimately familiar and working through every single iteration of the plan. You know, we've always known that we had room, that we could expand the boat ramp and boat ramp parking, but we did a terrible job of indicating that and showing that in a spatial manner, because we had been more focused on the actual future development plan, thinking that the boat ramp was already existing, so we just kind of cut it off there. So we worked on, Chris's group actually pulled together a this plan this morning, so that we could show that we own additional land adjacent to the boat ramp, we own additional land in unincorporated Bay County adjacent to the tourist mixed use category, and that if there is a need, then we certainly have the ability expansion of the boat ramp.
And Bridget, you had actually verbally mentioned that during the previous meeting, but we just figured it would be helpful for everybody to, because, you know, especially in a crowded room, to be able to physically see what Bridget had referenced previously in the previous meeting that we had.
Jim brought this up, but one purpose and intent of the comp plan is to provide adequate supply of public housing. And I don't just live here, I own a business here. I've been located here for 20 years. It's really hard to recruit talent to Mexico Beach because you don't have a place for them to live. So I'm for the progress. But you've made changes to this plan in a week or as recently as this morning. And you've said that the public has raised points that you don't always think about. Some of what I've heard the public say tonight, these concerns are beach access, parking for beach access. Looks like Pier Park, and one of the points in point 2A of the city's intent is to maintain the traditional town development pattern and historical appearance of its coastal architecture, not Pier Park. This just seems like a fluid process. I'm glad you made some changes this morning, but I would like, honestly, to see more. See what your design intentions are with the apartments. See some elevations. Do they maintain the coastal character? I know that when this was done, when St. Joe Company did this with Windmark Beach, there was a collaboration with the community, and parking was made available along the way, and restrooms are made available at those parking places. And it just seems like we're not quite there yet in Mexico Beach with something that's gonna have such a radical change. That's where I'm.
Okay, thanks. One of my questions was, why a PUD? Why not just develop it under tourist mixed use?
I think that both the comp plan language and the tourist mixed use land category and the land development regulations say that the tourist mixed use land use category may be developed through a PUD and process. And we had some discussions with previous city administration and council that led us in the direction of submitting a PUD application. We feel like too, it's a good idea for us to come in with an overall concept plan so everybody can understand what, you know, potentially this area could look like. As opposed to coming in piecemeal and doing, you know, more of a fragmented, community development. And then if we just say, oh, we're just here for 217 or 216 apartments, nobody has any idea what is going on the rest of the property.
And as I understand it, under a PUD, it has to be single ownership as opposed to the alternative of being able to sell off different parcels to different developers and have them do their own thing.
I believe it indicates in there that when the PUD is initiated, it has to be under single ownership.
Right.
I don't think it prevents post-PUD approval, selling off.
But if there wasn't a PUD, the land could be sold off individually, developers, they could do their own thing
Yes.
without a master plan.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, I have been assured that these design specs meet what the requirements are. However, in these tables provided for potable water demand and wastewater demand, there's some calculations here based, and it says these factors are established in the Orange County Utilities Standard and Construction and Specifications Manual. So I looked that up online, and I found some interesting information there. It says that under these apartments, multifamily projects are based on apartment units only. No additional design flows for management offices, laundry facilities, pools, or other amenities are included in those numbers. And so that concerns me. Under hotel rooms, again, additional capacity for food service, meeting rooms, service, self-service laundry, none of those things are included in these, according to that particular document. So I question about where we are with really getting good, accurate information about the demand for water and wastewater. So, can you address that? Because that's what this document says.
I can, yes. At the PUD level, you're looking at a wholesale master plan of the entire community. Not all of the separate phases have been designed at this point in time. So the high level of detail, you're not able to get to that level of detail without having a complete design for every phase.
I understand that.
But that is our next step, is the
Okay.
development order. And the development order, they do look at the pool and the laundry and everything else, so
Good,
it's
because-
a phased process.
You know, the other thing is, of course, the two things that are coming up first are the apartments and the hotel. And so.
The hotel is the very last
Is it
thing.
the last thing?
The
Okay.
hotel is at
2039.
2039.
Okay, good.
2039.
Thank you, I didn't understand that. So when we look at those, you know, I hope that we get better data for exactly where that is, and that we take into account, Mexico Beach still does have undeveloped lots, and that hasn't been addressed. On my block, between Second and Third Street, there are 7 vacant lots that have never been developed. So, you know, if all of our capacity goes here, then, you know, where does that leave those lots that exist in town? I'm sure you have,
Within the packet, it shows all the separate phases. It shows 18 separate phases. And I'm not saying that every phase will be a development order.
right,
But there's a potential for every single phase to be a separate development order.
Oh.
There's a potential for some of these phases to be broken into multiple pieces. When each phase is brought to the planning board and brought to the county and the city for approval. So
I understand.
this will go on over and over and over again.
I understand
to
we're
work out all
looking
those
for
details.
20 years of fun and excitement at planning and zoning and considering it. I get that. But I just wanna be sure that, you know, you're aware of the things that I'm looking at, that I'm seeing, and I'm gonna go right into the detail there. And, you know, I didn't download the entire 457-page document, ran out of printer paper, but I'll do that in the next 20 years. That's all I know.
Nick, I understand, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. As a result of this meeting, we need to have a decision to move forward. And my question is, move forward with the decision. My question is, whatever decision we make, is there any reason why we can't send comments with our decision, addressing particular areas that we would like addressed in the future as it goes to the council?
Yeah, you absolutely can. The Land Development Code, the section that talks about what you're doing tonight, the very last sentence, it says the Planning and Zoning Board shall then send its recommendations to the Mexico Beach City Council. So recommendations automatically implies it's not just yes or no. If you say yes, but with this, or yes, you can add some detail.
Okay. Well, I would encourage our board then to make recommendations, whether we vote to approve or disapprove, and send those recommendations to the council. And I think the way to do those recommendations is they would, I think, be the same with a yes or a no vote, to incorporate those as part of what we send, and we can have input right here after the vote to get down what we want to send with our vote. So, and we're advisory, so council makes the final decision. And my understanding is that the council meeting tomorrow cannot vote on this yet. I think there's a time lapse in there, but I could be wrong on that. Do you have any input on that, Nick?
The council meeting tomorrow is a first reading of an ordinance that would be the process to adopt the plan unit development. The real decision would be February 25th, is that right? That's the second reading. It'll be in the newspaper ahead of time, it'll be online. So you're looking at February 25th is the most important date in this process. I think that's also the date that the development order would be considered. It's not on the agenda for tomorrow, is it? Because we don't have an answer on the plan unit development yet.
All right, so let's cut to the chase. On the plan unit development, does anybody want to make a motion to accept or deny?
this is gonna happen whether, regardless of what we say, okay? So, I mean, I would, somebody that can vote, I would ask them to make a motion that, the council approve it with some specific changes in mind, some specific changes are made. Everybody's addressed the traffic issue here on the boat road ramp, and it's gonna be a jump screw, okay? The parking in the town development area, everybody agrees that that's gonna be a real problem too. So those problems that everybody in the community has addressed, I think need to be addressed by St. Joe Company. At least we can come out with a workable solution, because from what I see right now, this first development is not gonna work. I mean, that's just my take on it.
Jim's an alternate, so do we have a motion from a member?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
you have a second?
What was the motion?
Motion was to approve the PUD. Does the motion have any stipulations about comments?
When do we do that on the second part?
First part. First is the PUD, that's what we're talking about.
I think we need to include some response with that, some conditions or some suggestions, if you will, with that. So I don't want us just to go, yes, we approve it.
Are we gonna vote on that, or?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, with conditions, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's already been moved and seconded, and they just approve it then, so you have to vote on that first.
Right.
Either vote on that motion, or if the people who made the motion and second, if they want to modify the motion, they can.
Yeah, I mean, we can modify the motion to attach, our stipulations.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
And I second that change.
okay. All right. I can call it. Okay, let's call the roll.
So what is the motion on the floor?
Yeah,
The motion on the floor is to accept the PUD with stipulations going to the council in regards to what items we want St. Joe Development Company to look at and address in the PUD.
Do you know what those stipulations are? That motion alone, without the stipulations being.
Okay, we'll get, I think, the ones I have, I'll start it off. I have traffic, addressing the single entry to the boat ramp and the apartments. Parking, both beach parking and parking ratios in and around the apartments. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but beach access for people that are driving. Some parking down there by the beach, so they have an area to get to.
Can I ask a question?
Okay?
If we've identified that this is problematic, there are problems, why would we be approving this and just noting the problems rather than the plan?
That's what we're voting on.
Somebody has
If you
common sense.
disapprove of the way the motion's been done, then one would vote no.
As I stated earlier, I'm for the ultimate development, but it's been changed as of this morning, so I think we need due diligence to get it right, rather than say we accept what's wrong and hear all the things that are wrong.
And you can't do it over.
It's, you know, I would just say that we've heard it's a conceptual plan, and we have to give a yay or a nay on both this and the apartment complex. That's what we're charged with for our attorneys, so.
So are we set like we are with my motion? Is anything need to change? Do I need to make a change to?
Were those the stipulations that you would like with your
Right,
motion?
yes.
We need,
What
we
about
also.
the boat con?
Yeah,
The
for
ramp?
now, yeah.
Because, you know, as I understand it, it's a 20-year lease, we're 10 years into it. Is this the time that we put some demands in terms of the boat ramp?
Yes, okay, good point.
Double.
Anything else
That can be added.
from the group?
Put the apartments on the backside,
It's not there.
Okay.
not by my house.
Traffic, parking, beach access, boat ramp.
Yes.
Canal traffic is also added.
That they deed it to Mexico Beach.
Yeah.
Jim, I couldn't hear.
If they deed it to Mexico Beach, the boat ramp, is that the way we're going?
Something beyond 10 years.
Well, no, I'd say Mexico Beach ought to own it.
Yeah.
One comment on that, if you recall, Port St. Joe developed and paid for developing the boat ramp, so just like when we took over the maintenance of, if we want to take over the maintenance of 98, and we didn't, thankfully, there comes a cost with owning something, so just throw that out there. But we definitely do need to address the boat ramp for additional parking, additional improvements, as we incorporate more and more people in our communities. Okay? All right, let's vote.
Are y'all okay still with the 900 number, or was that still open at
Can't
all,
be.
where
Can't be changed. It's already been approved by the council.
the 900
Yep.
is?
Okay, let's vote.
Let's rephrase
Right.
everything and summarize it before we vote, just so everyone's clear.
Okay.
And I saw Mario taking good notes, I saw the chairman taking good notes. Who wants to
All
take
right.
a turn?
I had notes too.
Okay.
That's what the chairman.
Dave, would you restate your motion, and I'll give you the points, I'll add the points after.
Motion to approve with the stipulations to be stated by the chairman.
And I
Okay.
second.
And the stipulations are to address the traffic of the one entry for both the boat ramp and the apartments. Parking both at the apartments and beach parking. Also beach access for the people on the north side of the complex, including some access for people to drive and park and then go to the beach. Boat ramp, additional room for parking, and potentially ownership of the boat ramp by Mexico Beach. And to address canal traffic with the additional increase in the anticipated number of boats, what St. Joe can do in relation to that. Okay? All right. I'm going to call a roll. Voting yes is to vote for the PUD. Alex?
No.
Jack?
No.
Bill Driver, yes. David Masters?
Yes.
Laura Metcalf?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. The people that did not vote are alternates, so that's why they didn't vote. Okay, the next thing, we need to. I'm sorry?
It's sad they couldn't vote.
The next thing we need to talk about then is the development order for the apartment complex.
And to introduce that, I would suggest that you, just right off the bat, incorporate all the testimony from the first hearing to this second issue as well, and then ask for any additional comments that haven't already been provided, because there was a lot of them.
Okay. Let's do the early departures.
Please stay. Please stay.
So, the next point of business we have before us is we have recommended to the council, so they have the final say, to approve the PUD. The other application that we have to address is the first phase of the PUD, which is the 9 office buildings I'm sorry, excuse me, office buildings, 9 apartment complexes. So, could you review that for us one more time?
Absolutely.
And with that, we are going to move over all the comments that we had on the PUD as a whole, because I think they incorporate into the apartments, whatever. But let's talk specifically now about the apartments and how soon, how many, and where are they gonna be?
All right, so, as mentioned, this is for a development order for the first phase of development pursuant to the PUD, that was just conditionally approved. This first phase is 9 different apartment buildings. They're located here. For those of you who can't see, these are the 9 buildings here. In addition, this is the Boulevard access road to provide access there with the connection to the existing boat ramp road. In those 9 apartment buildings, there are going to be 216 units. The total project area is 25.36 acres. The right-of-way for the boulevard entrance connecting 298 is proposed to be an 80-foot right-of-way. Parking required based on the calculations is 432 total spaces. We are providing with our site plan 437 spaces. The density is 8.5 units per acre. Total impervious percentage is 35.73%. In addition to the 9 apartment buildings, there are 6 garages. There's a clubhouse / pool.
Go a little slower for us, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. In addition to the 9 apartment buildings, there are 6 garage units. There's a clubhouse / pool. There's a large park area. There's specifically a dog park area. Stormwater treatment is provided to state standards and to City of Mexico Beach standards by a combination of 3 wet detention ponds that provide treatment for sections of the development. Additionally, there are 4 linear retention stormwater facilities along the boulevard entrance to provide stormwater treatment for the boulevard entrance as well. As Mr. Crook mentioned earlier, we've gone through the analysis more specifically on this phase because we have specific design parameters in terms of wastewater and water. Our water will connect to the city's water system with a 10-inch water main on the east side of the canal. The stormwater, the wastewater is gravity sewer collected, being routed to an on-site lift station where it is then pumped and connected to the city's master lift station, which we provided information to Panhandle Engineering regarding the pumps for that station. Let's see what else. Oh, solid waste. That was a concern earlier. This plan includes a large compactor area here at the entrance of the facility. It is a commercial facility, so that will be handled by the controlling commercial entrance.
Is that going to be a bear-proof trash compactor?
Is that going to be a bear-proof trash compactor?
It will after they lose their trash.
It is an enclosed compactor area as well. Let's see, wetland buffers as required, and as I mentioned earlier, this area, there are no impacts proposed outside of anything that was already approved for wetland impacts. On average, we provide a 25-foot wetland buffer with a minimum of 15-foot, which is only in a couple of areas that are not like a hardened parking lot area or building. It's basically, the fenced-in area with some general site grading for the park area. There are proposed sidewalks throughout this development, including a trail path throughout the park, going all the way around the pond, going around the wetlands, and also a playground for recreational. I believe that just about covers it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
How high of structures?
Yes, so we are limited to the 48 feet height. As mentioned, the max number of stories is 3 feet. I am 3 stories. Well, see, I was thinking about what I was about to say. I am aware that there is a typo on the development order application that was submitted as part of the package. It says a max building height of 10 feet. That is not, I believe that was a setback that was put there instead of a building height. I mean, that might be comfortable for myself, but maybe not for everybody else. So it would fit within the 48-foot maximum building height with a 3-story maximum.
Can you clarify the building height definition?
I believe that is to the mean roof height per the land development
change the LDR from the top of the roof to the mean height? Why did we do that?
It's been mean height.
We'll discuss that later. Are these buildings to be on pilings?
No, I do not believe that these are going to be on pilings.
In the wetland? I know.
Will there be laundry facilities as part of this, in these apartments? What's the situation there?
It's a per unit.
We'll have some laundry facility, but each unit will have washer dryer connections.
Okay, and so you've taken into account that extra flow. And the other question I have is, you talk about a playground, is that just for the use of the residents there, or is it open to the public? And if it's open to the public, are there restrooms?
It's for the use of the apartments.
Okay.
Oh, so the public won't have use to any of those facilities?
No.
Okay, we know what you're asking. They're gonna show us where other areas are.
Start by
that
just
would
showing
be
the
public.
outline of this development order, as opposed to the rest of the community.
Sure. This development order is, the entry, sorry, let me do this. This development order includes a portion of the entry road up to this point, and here is the outline for these, apartments. And then we have got, this plan might be a better, because it shows all the trail connections. We are contemplating this as being.
Bridget, can you stand to the side, please? You're blocking them out.
Yes. This is contemplated to be a civic and recreation area. We have got open space trails here around stormwater ponds, open space trails that go down to the beach. And we've got some facilities up in here where we could create park areas for the public to access and enjoy. In addition, as we develop some of the commercial spaces down here, there would be opportunities to enjoy some of that commercial area, looking out either over some stormwater ponds or ultimately overlooking the canal area.
But the playground, the dog parks and all that would just be for the complex?
For this development order, yes.
Is there any way that that second opening to 98 could be used for construction of the first phase so that the boat ramp would not be, the traffic on the boat ramp would not be bothered with the construction? Like, could you do the road you said eventually you were gonna have them connect each other? Is there any way you could temporarily have that now where there would be a separate entrance for construction?
We can take a look at that for both construction, staging, construction access and staging, trying to do something that would.
Instead of where we're all going into the
That's
boat
something,
ramp.
yeah, we'd certainly be happy, we'd certainly take a look at that.
Okay. Any other questions on the apartments in the back?
Could you tell me again how many parking places there are per unit? Two. I live in a complex where there are 2 parking places for each unit, and it's woefully inadequate. If someone has teenagers, then they have 4 cars, not 2. I can't have my friends come to Prairie Roof because there's no place for them to park. I have to go up and down the sidewalk asking neighbors, could we maybe park at your place, could we maybe park at your place, could we? There's no parking. If I'm there and my husband's there, there's no place for a guest to park, there's no place for friends to come visit. It's 2 parking places. You might ask Adrian, well, he manages some complexes around here. People come to visit us to go to the beach, they can't park. I live in a complex of student units. So ask Adrian, is 2 parking places work?
I don't think it's as big of a problem as maybe one.
I think also too recognize that parking was on one of our number 2, substantially behind traffic.
That was beach parking and boat parking.
We mentioned apartment parking around the apartment.
Thank you, I didn't know that.
Yep, no, that's good.
I have a question.
Julie?
And I don't remember the man in yellow's name, but I guess it would be directed at you. For the apartments, are they gonna be, is it kinda gonna be like an HOA? Cause you're saying it's not gonna be allowed for short-term rentals. So I'm guessing there's gonna be like a covenant and a restriction to prevent that from happening, like in a subdivision or something that doesn't allow it.
No, ma'am, it's one ownership, that ownership will rent apartments and they manage apartments. There will not, none of these will be sold.
It's
They're only-
regulated, they're leased.
They're leased, each one is leased.
Okay, they're just gonna be leased, okay.
Okay, we had one more, yes, sir.
Yeah, I just got 2 quick points. One, this phase 1 takes up so much land, is it not gonna inhibit your ability to address some of the concerns in the PUD? If that gets
Yeah,
pushed
it's
through?
just, it was close, but just slightly, it cuts off here. But, I mean, that was
Yeah,
pretty close.
well, yeah. Well, my point is, I think it really removes your ability to make changes in the flexibility plan to move forward with the development order. And 2, I'm not sure, I couldn't quite follow, but, as part of the overall, the regard to provide neighborhood parks and community parks, and I would just ask and verify that whatever that proportional obligation is for the whole PUD, it be included in each phase, so that it's not promised for a future phase.
Yeah, I think that's 25%, and it's in the documents. But yeah, we're absolutely in favor of that.
What is the projected date you're looking at to begin this?
I believe that question was asked earlier, and it was summer of this year, obviously pending, all the permits coming through. But anticipated for summer of this year with an 18-month completion.
So that's one of the big concerns with our little building department and inspections and everything else, and all the residents trying to get their permits and trying to get back in, and their homes built. How much of an impact is that gonna have on our residents trying to get their developments done, their buildings done?
Well, they work part-time, so that shouldn't be a problem.
They work hard, I can tell you. Okay? All right, going to close the public part. Open the comment. Does any board members have any comments about this? What we would be voting on, in summary, would be to approve or disapprove the development application for these 217 apartments.
216.
216 apartments, 9 buildings. And this is a recommendation that goes to the council. So when I say approve, it's just a recommendation that goes to the council.
Yeah, I have a question, okay? Is there anything in this development order application that would modify, waive, or reduce anything in the LDR? Is it strict conformance with the LDR?
With the exception of the right-of-way width for the boulevard entrance, which is just, it is an excess of the table that lays out the standard rights of way. But that is identified in the PUD application as the only real deviation from the LDR for the entire plan unit development.
Okay.
It's for the boulevard, boulevard cross-section, more aesthetic, a little safer, get some separation.
50 feet to 80 feet.
That right-of-way is 80 feet rather than 50.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
I just want to ask one question here about the total, the water capacity we already covered, but how does that affect the water pressure in the homes? Because my water pressure is pretty sorry right now as it goes. It goes
Better than
down.
mine.
Well, you look further on down. Will all this building affect our water pressure?
Water pressure is maintained by a pump system. Pressure is different from flow.
Okay.
We've kind of talked quite a bit about the flow, but
But what about the water pressure though? What's the fix for that, or what do we need? Is that gonna be addressed?
I'm not sure what kind of pump systems that you
I
have
believe
here.
they have a 4-pump system, and typically we only run 2, so it would just be bringing one of the other pumps on.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's all we do is regular. Well, why haven't we done that?
again, they're on automatic flows, so I mean, when the pressure gets to a certain amount, then the next pump kicks in, and when the pressure gets to the next amount.
I guess
the
that's
next
just
pump kicks in.
old history stuff, but you know, the water pressure issue's been around for a long time, even before this was even proposed. But I didn't realize that, but okay,
I'll check with Thomas tomorrow.
thanks.
And Mark, if I may, in response to that, we actually, as part of the analysis for this phase, we are required to ensure not only that potable demand is provided for the units, but that there's adequate fire flow and pressure for the servicing of that fire flow. So we actually went out and did fire hydrant testing in the area that we were connecting to, got those residual pressures, and then modeled that system connecting to the furthest north building. And so we were able to show that at the required fire flow, we had adequate pressure to service that. So that shows that the pressures in the area will be sufficient, even with fire flow running in the max day scenario for the city.
Okay, anybody else on the board? I would just like to comment that my experience has been that we've put some stipulations here to send with it. And I think in my mind, the way I'm considering this is these stipulations need to have some teeth. And in my mind, I'm gonna anticipate that the teeth are gonna be on that apartment approval process. And I guess the way I'm leaning towards is not approving the apartment complex until they come back to us with solutions on the issues that we're sending upstream. That's all I've got to say.
Agreed.
Okay? All right, do we have a motion on the development order for the 216 apartments, 9 buildings?
I'll make a motion to be denied until some of these issues are worked out.
I second.
Okay? Let's call a roll. Alex,
Yes.
you're saying yes to not this.
Yes, I voted it.
You're going with the
Yes to
motion?
deny.
Yes.
Okay. Yes to deny. Mr. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Driver, yes. Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Ms. Lord?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the apartment complex is on hold till we see, at least our recommendation to the council is to put that on hold until we see some movement on the items that we've identified in the first section. Okay? All right?
Thank you guys for your time.
Can we have a motion to close?
Can we address ordinance 741, because there's gonna be some requirements for changing that based on what happened tonight.
Is it something we need to do now or next meeting?
Well, it's gonna be read at the city council meeting for the first reading. For the first reading.
741, I think 741.
That's already in there. It's one we got last week. What needs to be changed is, okay, the date that it appeared before the planning and zoning board definitely didn't appear on the 3rd. And then we need,
After recommendations, this is a draft.
okay, we need to add stipulations to it. Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Nick.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I know we didn't all agree on everything, but it's great input. It's our town, and keep coming.
So we adjourn?
We adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Second. Approved, yes.